Hello, hello. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of Baki Taki. Excellent. That's the title of the episode. I didn't really catch why it's called that. Also, there's 4 N's in excellent, but I can't really get that through audioly, or if anybody knows how to pronounce that, please let me know. But we've got another new guest this episode. It's my father-in-law, Kevin.
Hello, hello, everybody.
Hey, and I will edit out your last name. I meant to say just Kevin.
That's all right with me.
So whenever I have a new guest on the show, I have a few questions that I ask them just to give the audience a chance to get to know you. So, other than Baki, what shows are you currently watching?
Shows. Wow. We've recently moved, so I don't spend a lot of time watching TV other than I would say Yellowstone is my go-to right now.
Yeah, that fits. I feel like that fits in with the place you've moved to.
Less the animals and the acreage.
Yeah.
But yes.
Nice.
So feel free to call me Rip if you'd like.
Oh, of course. I was just about to ask. So, second question. Before you watched this episode, what did you know about Baki going into it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and very little to none. I have been listening to the podcast now that I have a little bit of a travel in my coming back and forth to the city. So I've only been listening to the podcast, and I've probably listened to the last 6 or 7 podcasts. So I'm filled with questions, although I do, Steve, have to thank you for the introduction to this via your wife, my daughter. This is the first episode that I actually watched, and it's pleasantly surprising.
Great. Yeah, I think it's a common thing for this show to leave people filled with questions, but hopefully watching it has answered some. Well, I guess that's the first question, because you've listened to the podcast. What did you think of the art style? What did you think of how everything looked?
Yeah, it was great. I was expecting more of a 2D animation, so overall, I thought it was really impressive. It's amazing how many muscles they can fit onto only one single body. That's for sure. Muscles in their face and their calves, and you name it, the biggest muscles they have. So,
yeah.
But yeah, pleasantly surprised.
And this episode was even missing like the most muscular guys. These were just the guys who know kung fu.
So that's a great lead into my question, if I may ask, because I've only been listening to the podcast. Help me understand the premise of this, being a Baki newbie. I mean, are like all 3 episodes all 3 parts?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do each half-hour show lead up into carry on a theme for the entire season, or is this just one big championship bout? Or help me understand that.
Yeah, so Baki is sort of wild. It's been running, the manga that it's based on has been running for I think like 25 years or something. So it's this very long story about the core of it is Baki wants to get strong enough to fight his dad, who is the strongest man in the world. The thing is, like, this is just such a small subsection of it, so it's going through twists and turns. So the first 2 seasons, or the first 2 parts, the 5 death row inmates simultaneously broke out of their cells and swam or flew to Japan to taste defeat. And meanwhile, Baki lost his virginity. That was basically the first 2 parts. That led to Baki getting poisoned, so they flew him to China. Where he has to fight in this tournament. He was actually on death's door about a few hours before this episode was taking place. So that's a long way of saying that there is an overarching story, but it's very it goes in a lot of weird places, like a winding road.
And the Jaku and Retsu, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing those correctly, is there a good one, a bad one? It seemed like that they were on teams of sorts.
So great question. So what's happening is, so this is the Grand RaiTai tournament. It's held once every 100 years, and it's usually all of the best Chinese martial artists fighting each other. This year they invited a bunch of American and Japanese fighters as sort of like an exhibition thing, but then the American and Japanese fighters sort of crushed them in every opportunity. So now it's turned into sort of like the Olympics. It's like a 5-on-5 duel. I guess that's nothing like the Olympics, but between China and America and Japan. So there's no real bad guy. Retsu has sort of been our... he's much more of a main character than Jaku, but he's representing China, who in this world is probably the bad guys. It's always fun to see China through the lens of Japan. So they're both good guys, I would say. I find Jaku a bit annoying.
Please, I beg you, Kaioretsu. Please, won't you come to Japan and teach with me? Please, please.
Neither of them are villains in this fight.
And the first fight in this particular episode, is there a heavyweight and then a middleweight, and Baki is a lightweight? I just see the difference in sizes when they're all together.
Well, just wait until the final fight. It has a guy who's about 6'5" fighting a 4-foot tall, 140-year-old man. I think the weights were just sort of, they lucked into it for this round. The two guys are sort of similar in weight. Weight doesn't play into things too much in this show. They like to have, like the idea of like the bigger they are, the harder they fall type of martial arts logic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very unrealistic. The taller person will win every fight, is my opinion. But
coming from a tall individual like yourself.
Well, I'm just saying I'd win 96, 97% of my fights. But
unless you come up against somebody that has, the grip of strength.
Yeah.
Retsu has.
Well, yes, or the skill. But yeah, you know what? Let's jump into the first fight. So we're carrying on from last week. It's still Kaioretsu versus Kaiojaku. At the end of the last episode, Jaku had walked up and shook Kaioretsu's hand and tried to trick him, and then did it again. And then in this episode, he does it a third time.
His hand is practically radiating malice, and his smile too. Don't be fooled, Kaioretsu. No. Kaioretsu took his hand, or should I say the bait?
Would you agree that Kaioretsu is a bit of an idiot in this fight, or do you think that he was being honorable?
I would think he's being honorable, Steve, and knew that his strength, he would. I think it's an honorable statement.
Yeah, you never see that in like. In boxing. I think that'd be cool if they just took off their gloves and shook hands in the middle of the fight every once in a while.
Be a little different. That would definitely be different. And anybody with the ability with their toes to take down a man of that size by the beard should not be fearful of shaking hands a third time.
I wanted to bring that up. That was probably the best move of the fight. So after the third time Retsu loses, or the third time Retsu gets tricked into a handshake, he dislocates his shoulder, and so he now has to use his feet to fight. He shows such amazing feats as like grabbing the guy's hand with his toes, but also ripping Jaku's beard off with his toes. Have you ever considered using that move in a fight?
Me personally, my feet stay on the ground. I'm more like the Muhammad Ali Jr. individual.
Yes, I also like to compare myself to Muhammad Ali Jr. in a fight.
But just to keep my feet come up off the ground, I'm usually the one on my back.
Yeah, no, that and that's very fair. It's such a Kaioretsu move. Yeah, so this fight's a bit of a lopsided one. Kaioretsu has it seems like a clear advantage if he just didn't stop doing handshakes. I wanted to comment on one part that I liked. After his arm is dislocated, the Chinese fans, completely fed up over losing after China loses every fight, storm the stage and try and attack Kaiojaku. So I'm going to play the audio of people storming the stage, but I just want to point out how sanitized this was in the English dub. The subtitles literally just say, "Let's kill him, let's make it a bloodbath." So Anyway. What were your thoughts on that?
I thought it was humorous. There was nothing that any of them, individually or as a crowd, would do anything to that person. I'm sure. So taking their lives into their own hands.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Like, it would have just been a bloodbath. Yeah, so the fight continues. Retsu is what is it called? Using his foot, and Jakku, by the way, is still trying to pitch Kyoretsu to join his martial arts school. He was doing that in the last episode to other fighters. I don't know if it's gonna work.
And that's just to bring his 4,000 years of training back to create a powerful army. Is that the rationale behind trying to get him?
Yeah, but change up army for like martial arts school that he has. He's sort of like a businessman a bit in that sense. So the fight continues. This fight had so many I have like a whole paragraph of notes on things to bring up here, like the 3 yin intersection. If you grab somebody in the ankle, it's where the spleen, kidney, and liver meridian intersect. I didn't fact check that. Do you think that's a real thing?
And it's funny. I just assumed it to be correct, Steve. But I'm actually going to Google it right now just to fact check it.
Oh wow, we got real time fact checking. Because like it makes sense that there'd be, blood flowing through to your ankle, but
maybe not directly affecting your spleen, kidney. What was the third?
The liver. Yeah.
Liver. That's right.
That is a big thing. Like, whenever somebody goes down and I'm watching a basketball game or something, they hold their ankle. They could be out all season and need a new liver.
3 in intersection. According to what I'm reading on Google right now, it actually is correct, Steve. Chinese medicine. This point is where the 3 yin meridians, spleen, liver, and kidney intersect.
Jeez.
There you go. There is some fact in that.
Look at that. That's what I always say. It's all facts in this show. Everything's real until proven otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So on the topic of alternative medicine, so Retsu has a dislocated shoulder, and Jakku decides that he is going to fix it because it's not impressive. Nobody wants to go to learn martial arts from a guy who beat up a guy with a dislocated shoulder.
What's the point in beating you if you can only use one arm? I want to create interest in martial arts, but even if I defend myself perfectly, who cares if my technique can't defeat some other fighter who's at full strength?
The way that he undislocates his shoulder, I found interesting. Did you want to describe what happens and your thoughts on it?
Well, it's an elbow, is it not, Steve? Not a shoulder.
Oh, you're right.
Correct?
You're right.
Yeah, I think it's an elbow. So, yes, they showed this X-ray of the 3 bones that were definitely dislocated, and I was it just putting stress on the arm, and he almost mended it by using his strength. I'm assuming it didn't really show what he was doing because it was working off the X-ray, right? You just suddenly saw the X-rays and the bones were all back to where they should be.
You know what? I'm gonna fact check myself on this, but I think that actually how he did it is he threw Kyoretsu in the air, like over top. Yeah, he threw him around, and that vertical momentum was what relocated his elbow.
Well, again, we learned something. Dislocating your elbow, find somebody to throw you in the air using your arm, and it'll help mend the wound.
Well, that's what they train doctors for, But now I know what to ask for. So okay. So at this point, this fight's been going on a while. There's been a lot of back and forth. Retsu now is fully healed up, and he just completely starts going ham on Jakku.
With my body. What? And my soul. This is terrifying. I'll crush you.
This is where Jakku starts using a new unconventional defense. Can I get your thoughts on this part of the fight?
The turtle defense was very interesting, and for the punches and the blows to continue right on the shoulders or on his back. But then again, we learned, Steve, that your back is 7 times stronger than your front.
Yes. Do you want to know the weirdest thing? So sometimes when I'm watching these episodes, I leave the subtitles on and I'm seeing the 2 English translations at once. According to the original subtitled version, the back is 9 times stronger. But according to the English dub, it's 7 times stronger. Why they changed that between versions, I have no idea. But apparently there's some internal debate about how much stronger the back is.
Again, fighting strategy, probably not one I would encourage anybody to do, is getting into a turtle position and just sitting there. Probably not the best idea.
Are you serious? That looked unstoppable. I think that was ridiculous. I think he took 100 punches from Kaioretsu.
Yes. Yeah. Well, not that I would encourage anybody to do, Steve.
Wow. We just learned that Baki, all the medical stuff about Baki is real. So, but your mileage may vary.
And yes, the cinematography is unbelievable when you see those punches slow down and just the blows on the body, right, Steve?
Yeah. It's one of the funny things on this show is that whenever somebody does that, whenever they punch somebody 100 times, it's basically nothing. It's never going to accomplish anything. It's if you punch somebody once, maybe you'll knock them out, maybe you'll do something. But whenever they start punching so fast, it's always into a brick wall.
Oh man, shouldn't they end this?
No, it isn't over yet. It's absolutely not over yet. Your back can endure up to 7 times the punishment that the front of your body can take. If those strikes were hitting his front, then Jakku would have been finished long ago. The damage keeps adding up, but he's still very much conscious for right now.
They're very similar to the bleeding. You see a blow to the nose or the mouth, and it suddenly immediately starts bleeding, but then it stops and the blood just stays there.
Yeah. It's like in Baki, they don't have a circulatory system. There's no blood moving through them. You get hit once, the blood comes out, and then you're good.
Yep, and then it just stays. That's right.
Yeah. Oh man, very true. So Retsu at first seems a bit confused by the turtle technique. He actually stops punching, and then Jakku does a very cheeky move and says, "Oh, I've won." He stopped fighting. Then there's a headbutt, and starts getting punched again. The way that this stalemate is resolved, I would have thought that Retsu. Well, I'm not a martial arts master. How I would have beaten the turtle technique is I would have walked around to the other side and started punching him from the front, because I think I could probably move faster than a guy on his knees. What he did instead was, it seemed like he punched in between two joints on Jakku's spine, which somehow caused his nervous system to make him stand up, and then obliterated him. How would you have beaten the turtle approach, or do you think Retsu had it the right way?
Wow, Steve, that's a great question. Turtle approach. Probably stand back and wait for the individual to stand up. I'm not a ground and pound guy. It would worry me if somebody was just turtling like that, Steve.
I see. So you're going for the waiting game.
I think so, for sure. running around in front of him to attack again from the front. It's again, good strategy, but hopefully I never have to find out any or use any of those strategies in the future.
Yeah, well, they come up a surprising amount. It's funny. This is sort of the second strategy like this. Did you watch or listen to the episode with the Ali Agari maneuver?
Not off the top of my head. If it's in the last, who was your guest? Do you remember who your guest was when you were talking through it?
Probably was my dad.
May have been. I'm not sure, Steve.
Oh, no worries. It's not a quiz. Man, if somebody quizzed me on what I remembered from the podcast I listened to, it's not that type of medium, you know. But basically, the Ali Agari maneuver is based on a real thing, although I don't think anybody else calls it this. But where Muhammad Ali was put into sort of a UFC fight in the real world, and the fighter, realizing that Muhammad Ali could just obliterate him, decided to lay down on the ground and just stay there and try and grab him into like a judo hold type of thing. So it's another defense where you basically say, I'm not going to fight you. I'm just going to do a weird pose and hope that you fall into my trap.
More of the MMA.
Yeah. But like the worst type of MMA. So after Retsu forces him out of the turtle position, Jakku's completely out of tricks, and he is defeated. Now, this is a big win for China. They've lost the first 2 fights of the best of 5, so they needed this one. However, before anybody thinks that this is a win for China, remember, Retsu makes sure to point out that it's actually really embarrassing. He had 4,000 years of martial arts and is a genius at fighting with Chinese martial arts, and he barely won against this guy. And the other guy's really the winner.
This isn't my victory. The true hero here is Kaio Jakku.
Did you ever did you sense any like anti-Chinese bias in this in this episode?
Yeah, you know what? Now that you frame it like that, Steve, for sure. I was because it was the first episode I watched. I was probably more trying to understand what was going on, the individuals and everything else, and not really interpreting it that way. But as you talk through it, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's to be fair, it's one of those things you pick up if on the 4th time you've watched the show. Anyway, so there's one more fight in this episode, sort of like a palate cleanser after that big one. So
Steve, just before you go on, the end of the fight when he's literally dragging him out of the arena.
Oh yeah,
is that common? Is that what they do? Or do they just leave them there in their pool of blood and with arms raised?
Yeah, usually, honestly, yeah, they leave them in a pool of blood and then walk out to thunderous applause. It was very nice of Retsu to bring Jakku back and say that he is a hero who needs medicine.
Assist this hero. Attend to his wounds.
So again, showing that respect.
Yes. I can't believe some would say that Kaio Retsu was a villainous guy. Anyway. So in between rounds again, we are up at the penultimate fight of the tournament. China needs to win this one to tie things up. It's between Kaio Han and Muhammad Ali Jr. Well, first of all, so you've listened to the podcast, so I guess it wasn't a surprise for you that Muhammad Ali Jr. was in this tournament.
No, that's right.
Yeah, just makes sense.
But I was looking for a little bit of rope-a-dope rather than his signature moves. No kicking.
Yeah, he should bring some ropes in with him as like just to even it up. No kicking. I remember I used to think there was no kicking in boxing.
There isn't any kicking in a boxing match. I actually used to believe that myself a long time ago.
that was before this fight. Just before we get into it, because I am sure everybody's wondering who Kaio Han is, because he is one of the most unremarkable characters I've seen in the show. This is the only Kaio who hasn't fought yet. He is the brother of Kaio Lee, the guy who had poison hands. And for some reason, he thinks that he can beat Muhammad Ali Jr., mostly because he thinks that boxing is a stupid martial art, and why would you not kick people? Which on its surface makes sense. But, well, where do you stand on this whole, is boxing... Well, you know what? I guess, can you just describe how the fight goes? Because we'll get into this whole kicking thing.
Well, it's... before I answer that, Steve, was that his brother that he was warming up with when he kicked the apple and cut it? That was his brother, not his father?
Yes, yeah, that's his brother, Kaio Lee.
And he is well known in the Baki world?
Yeah, sort of. He was, but before they turned the tournament into a 5v5, it was originally a bracket, and he lost against Baki in the first round. So we know him, I guess.
So your question, circling back to your question now, what do I think about the a boxer being in a fight like this?
Yeah. Do you think Kaio Han's got a point about that boxing is a dumb martial art and that you don't get to kick people?
But it doesn't make sense to only use hand strikes. It's foolish to forego other techniques. For example, what about kicks?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a dumb martial art, but I mean, obviously they have kickboxing. I would be surprised that a boxer could easily take down somebody that is a full MMA fighter or has the skills that these individuals are showing in this match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair. And kickboxing is a great point. Like, if boxing normally has kicks, what's kickboxing? Editor's note, just a heads up. I may or may not have forgot to exit Facebook Messenger, which may or may not become apparent in the next little bit of dialogue. The show is almost like a collection of fables in a way. Like, a lot of fights just have sort of a lesson behind them. The lesson behind this fight is that boxing does have kicks in it. In fact, it's all about kicking. The most important boxing. What was the quote? At its core, boxing is the martial art of kicking the ground.
Instead, what gets kicked is the ground. Boxers kick the earth. At its core, boxing is the fighting art of kicking the ground.
Do you think that counts as a kick? Kicking the ground to punch harder?
I don't know if it could be scored as a kick. However, similar to golf, Steve, you do start from the ground up when you hit a golf ball. So, if it does enhance, strengthen, give you power in your punches, I've never done boxing. I'm not going to question, anything in Baki because we've been fact checking all of this and it's all correct.
Yes. Well, that brings up an interesting question. So, Muhammad Ali Jr. is obviously supposed to be Muhammad Ali, but Muhammad Ali at this point in time was like 70 years old. And he answers the question of how would a boxer do in a martial arts tournament? Now, I want to get your thoughts on, let's say that Phil Mickelson Jr. joins the tournament. He's in his physical prime, and he has turned golf into a martial art. He uses his feet. He uses a big wind-up to hit people very hard. Maybe he has a club. Do you think that just like Muhammad Ali Jr. can enter this tournament and do well, that a professional golfer, do you think they'd have the same advantage?
Not at all, unless they had a club in their hand. And they better make a real good shot with it the first time. Not at all. Can't compare those athletes, Steve. Although most golfers would like to think that they're athletes, but no.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
And I would say the same in any. If you put the skill set of these MMA fighters, or you can go back on YouTube and look for very early on in the MMA world when these not Chinese kung fu experts were in there. They used to beat the hell out of the guys in the MMA with their they really did, and that was the premise of it. And then MMA fighters have all of that skill set as well, right? They just once they get people on the ground, they twist elbows and shoulders and knees and put them in locks. But I could not imagine any boxer winning a fight against anybody with that skill.
Yeah. And it is true. Like I don't think boxers are typically shown that well in Baki. I think it's Muhammad Ali Jr. It's interesting. He is a great fighter, and I think it's almost entirely because the author is a humongous fan of Muhammad Ali, not just as a fighter but as a person, for his civil rights work. So he does a lot better than basically every other boxer or MMA fighter who ever shows up on this show.
And what was the significance, Steve, of that first punch that cut his opponent, the Sea King Han?
Yeah, I think that was just because he, I think it was just to show how fast he was.
Okay.
He moves like, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. He's just faster than his opponents. I was listening to the subtitles on this, and they did say he, what's it called? They compared his martial arts to a Western dance. But after he did that cut.
Yeah, of course. They did say that. More like a dance. Well, they said that before he went out, right?
Yeah.
A dance.
Yeah. Well, that's a big part of the footwork too, dancing around. It was funny. We got less hopping than we usually do from Muhammad Ali Jr.
That's right. It was over quick though. A couple punches, he was in and out.
Yeah. Although I will say that probably puts it in the longer half of the fights at this tournament. They've been such blowouts, but So the fight is basically 3 acts. Muhammad Ali Jr. slashes his face. Kaio Han shows off some cool kicks that do nothing, and then Muhammad Ali kicks the ground and punches Kaio Han to his doom.
And all it took was 2 punches, and he's out!
Kaio Han then falls over in a prolonged sequence that I think they just wanted to stretch the episode another minute, and then we cut to the end credits. So yeah, that's an episode of Baki.
Steve, they did use the something that I've never seen. Instead of the individual falling to the ground came up as he was talking through it. Why is the ground coming up? And
no, it was a good demise for this character that I have no reason to care about.
Now, is there fighting in every episode, Steve?
Pardon?
Is there fighting in every episode?
Oh, of course.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
This show isn't going to take time away from the fighting to do character development. This is a show where men fight.
Straight to the point.
Yes.
No discussion, just fight.
Yeah, so that was the 4th round, and if they didn't have time to bring it up in the episode, but that means that China has lost. They're now down 3-1, and there's only 1 fight left, which will be Kaio Kaku, the 146-year-old man, versus Yujiro Hanma, the strongest man on Earth, which I'm sure.
And if you win, you carry on, or help me understand that for the future episodes.
Yeah, so it used to be a bracket, like top 16, single elimination. Then China started losing so bad they changed the format. So now it's just 5v5 and either either China or Japan and US win. So 1 match and then you're done.
Very good.
Yeah. The reason that if they didn't do it that way, then all of the Japanese characters would have to lose to each other. So this way is more fun because then only China loses.
Yes. You've got me hooked.
Well, I can tell you the rest of the season's going to be good. So, well, I guess that leads into it. The question I ask everybody after their first episode: now that you've watched an episode of Baki, do you think that it's a good show?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think I believe the animation is much better than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not long. It's great. That's why I was asking the questions about, does it add up to a season long scenario of some sort? So I imagine, because I've heard familiar voices on your podcast, friends of yours, parents, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely going to go watch some of those episodes that I heard them talking, like you said earlier, about when Baki got poisoned and how he got poisoned. I definitely got to go back and watch that, and how, when he lost his virginity. And so I've listened to it. Now I'm going to definitely go back and watch a few, and I will probably go and watch the next couple as well.
All right. Well, yep. Every episode of Baki is great. The one where he loses virginity is pretty wild, but the other ones are a good watch. Great. Well, it's been a while since we've had an unqualified yes, it's a good show, so I'm glad to hear it. And yeah, anything else you wanted to add before we tie things up?
No, listen. Thanks for having me on, Steve, and continued success with your podcast.
Continued success. What a positive way to frame it. All right. Thanks for coming on the show. That's all the Baki we've got to talkie. See y'all next week.
RaiTai.